Jason Ryan is an Instagram follower and he's a member of the J Primecast community. He's got a lot of questions, which I think is really amazing, and I hope he keeps asking them. So rather than just giving him answers through DMs, even though I did a lot of that, rather than doing it through DM or through email, I thought it'd be a great idea to make some content out of these questions because I know that they are relevant to anyone who is beginning making comics. So I asked him if he'd be willing to record these questions for me. We tried doing it through live stream, it didn't work out, but he was willing to record these for me and send them on over. So I have the audio clips of his questions, and I'll be answering them. This will be followed up by other creative people, comic makers that I have reached out to answer the questions as well. So you'll get my answers in this episode, and then in the upcoming episode, you'll get answers from other independent creatives. Hope you enjoy. Before I get really rolling, I will just kind of give this first thought to you, Jason. It seems to me that a lot of what you're asking has to do with the right way to do things. And I think there are some right ways to do things, but it all depends on what your ultimate goal is for whatever it is you're working on. I don't mean your ultimate goal like working for Marvel someday. I don't know if that's true for you. I'm just making it up. I mean your ultimate goal as in telling the story. So I think whatever answers I give or the people I give that in the future for this show, I guess this podcast show, you have to bring it back to what your goal is as a creative person. And I think that means you also have to trust in your own creativity and not rely so much on what the right way is to do things or the wrong way. I think there's effective and ineffective, and I think that depending on what your goal is, there's effective and ineffective ways of telling your story. But I think a lot of that you'll figure out on your own as you're doing this, and that's true for me. And we'll go into the as I answer the questions. But yeah, I really want you to get out of your head, and I see you doing that more and more, and I see you realizing when you're stuck in your head through our talks in the J Primecast community. Um, but yeah, trust in the process. Don't worry as much about the right and wrong way of doing things. Yeah.
Putting your book on an online platform for people to read for free, is that wise to do, or is it better to do once the book is complete?
This depends on what your goal is. Like I was saying, if your goal is to just have people read your book, then just put it out there. If your goal is to make a little bit of money off of selling it, then I would recommend that you do what I did and wait to put it online until it's also in print. The part of this is because, honestly, the people that want to buy it physically, they're going to buy it physically. I don't think reading it online ahead of time or in PDF form makes a difference. I really don't. And I think you actually might get more people that are going to buy physically if they read it online first. So I don't think there's a huge dampener here. I don't or a drawback. For me, it was more about I didn't want to release it online before it was in print because I wanted them both at the same time so that everyone had equal access at the same time. So that means the people who got it in the mail got it right around the same time as the digital was released. Um, you know what I mean? It's kind of like putting a movie out on digital on Netflix before it comes out in the theater. The people that want to see it in theater will probably still go see it in theater. Actually, I don't know about that. Actually, no, I wouldn't. But it's like people that want to see it in theater are gonna be kind of pissed off because it's already been released digitally, on Netflix or whatever. So that was kind of my mindset. It probably didn't make a huge difference either way. I guess I kind of felt better. Um, so I will also say that making it money off of my comic book is not a big priority for me right now. I think with issue one, I did the Kickstarter, and I might have made like $800, but that was a combination of the comic and stickers and T-shirts and the merchandise. For issue two, the Kickstarter failed, but I did print it out. That cost a couple $100, maybe like 250 with shipping and everything. And then I haven't sold all of them. I haven't even sold 50 copies. So I think I've probably made my money back, but I've made mistakes with shipping. So I don't know. I don't even know if I've broken even, honestly. And honestly, it doesn't matter to me because I make money through commissions and stuff. So to me, it's the bigger picture. I'm doing fine. I'm okay with where I'm at with art money and, I'm sorry, making money through art. The priority for me is all this other stuff that I'm doing, like the content that I'm creating, because I believe that this will lead somewhere. I don't know where, but it will. So me making money off of one issue is not important to me. And even if I eat a little bit of that, I'm okay with that. I really am. So it depends on what your goal is for your first issue. If you want to get it out there, get it out there. And the other option is if you want to like do it. This will actually answer your question later on, but you could do like weekly updates. You could do Instagram updates on your not like updates like how it's going, but like actually release. Here's one page for the week. Here's page two for the second week. So you can do that. Um, if you just want to get it out there, you know. But if you want to make money off of it, um, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Honestly, it makes sense though that you would charge for it online while you charge for it in the physical copy at the same time.
Flashbacks. What's the best way to illustrate a flashback? Just put it in a different color scheme, maybe grayscale, or is there something that I'm missing that indicates a flashback to let the reader know this is a flashback?
This is one of those times where you should rely on your creative process. Just try it out and see what happens. What I did for issue one, I had a backstory. Actually, I had two types of flashbacks, and I don't think I effectively did them both. But the first type of flashback was this 4 page black and white explanation of what was going on inside of my what was going on Earth at the time of Scolder Stories issue one, or I'm sorry, the kind of like the history of where things were to where they are now, if that makes sense. So I did that in black and white in ink, like actual pencil and ink, and then I colored a little bit of it with a Copic marker. That was, I had done that as a whole separate thing, and then added it to issue one, so it had a naturally different look because it was done in a different process. Because issue one was colored digitally, and the flashback stuff was all done by hand. But it was still my style. It was still me. I think recognizably me. It just was black and white mostly, with a little bit of color versus the rest of the book, which was full color and done with pencil and uninked. The other flashback that I had in issue one was just one splash page, like a landscape splash page. Landscape as in you had to like turn the book to look at it. Um, but that one I didn't differentiate it very much from the rest of the book. You probably wouldn't even notice it. And that was just a mistake I made. I did an ineffective method. I tried to kind of do like shadowy kind of feel to it around the edges, and I didn't pull it off. I don't think. And then it was also the dad was like dying at the beginning of the book, and then all of a sudden here he is shooting the dragon. So I was hoping that the context would make sense, and I don't think I pulled it off. I probably should have spent more time on that, or asked someone if it was effective or not. So that's what I would do is just try it out, see what happens, and then ask people, hey, is this effective? And you can come to the J Primecast community. We have a feedback channel, dude. Just post it and say, hey, does this work or not? Um, and we'll give you our honest feedback, man. So yeah, different colors is fine. Doing like a hazy kind of feel, bringing in another artist would be a cool idea. I saw that recently on. I was reading Ultimate Fantastic Four, and there was two different artists doing two different timelines for the same issues for this little arc. Um, so that's an option. Just be creative about it, and you'll figure it out. And then ask for feedback.
Storyboard art. I understand what it is, just is it important? Do I need to do that or not so much?
All right, so layouts. I do recommend that you do layouts. Some people go a pretty significant amount of detail in their layouts. I don't. Mine are like super teeny tiny, and I just it's just like a starting point. So I go from my script to my layouts to then starting to pencil things in. So for me, it's just a starting point so that I can flesh out if a pacing kind of works ahead of time. Um, and it's really I think it's important with comics that you see, not just see like read it on a script, that you actually see it in layout form, page by page, up against each other, and even like paired. The left and right sides paired together. And Clip Studio Paint does a good job of this. But I think it's important that you see how things look before you get rolling. You could totally get rolling without layouts and just tweak it as you go. But I think just drawing small, I think it gives you a nice jump start on that. So I no I when I do my layouts, I'm not married to them at all. when I start actually doing the pages, I change a lot of stuff. You'll see that in the issue 1 video where I did the creator's commentary. That there were a couple pages that I really kind of butchered and started over on, and so it's just for me, it's just like it's like a trampoline. You're just kind of jumping off of it, or like a diving board, I guess. It's just you're jumping off of it before you begin the book proper. You know what I mean? So yeah, I do think layouts are very important, and I do recommend that you do them. Um, it's just like it's a warm up, and it should be. For me, it's super fast. I don't spend a whole lot of time on it at all because I know I'm gonna change it anyways. And it also kind of gives you a little bit of a prep work for where balloons might be placed, the thought, not thought bubbles, but narration balloons and all your text and whatnot. And so it's really helpful, man. It's very, very helpful.
Writing your story in script form, is it important to write the entire thing out, including dialogue, before you tackle the art? Or do you put the dialogue in as you go, or maybe after all the art is done?
So to me, this is a per person answer. I really recommend that you do some script writing. For everything I've done, I do a lot of script writing. I go above and beyond, honestly. So I have my scripts written, but then I also have this timeline written in a whole separate document of like my characters' birthdays and um, their relationships and what they're doing during different time periods. Because I like to have the continuity is very important to me. I don't want to have any plot holes, and I probably already do, and I hate like it's hard to fill in those plot holes. Um, so writing it all down is really helpful, and even if you don't do like I have my timeline. I have a page that I've written for different races and creatures in my world. I have the Scoldropedia, which goes into even more stuff on my website. So at a minimum, I do think a script is very important because it helps you to flesh out your ideas. For the way I work is if an idea is in my head, it's just in my head. But once I get it down, it becomes real, and then it helps me to further explore and expand upon those initial ideas. And I think that's kind of the heart of writing. So scripts to me are the backbone of your book. I think it's very, very important. I would really recommend that you spend some time on a script. Not everyone does. I'm sure there's people out there. Interstate Ninja did not do a full script, and I think he made a very solid book with Ninjas and Robots issue 1. I interviewed him about that, and we actually talked about writing a little bit for my interview with him, which you can find in the podcast or on my YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can find them both in both places. So yeah, that's my answer. I would recommend doing a script. How the script is formatted is totally up to you. The first time I started writing, I had a more of a formal fit to how the script flowed, like with formatting it. You know what I mean? And then as I keep writing, I realized I don't need to go into that in much detail. So I was just kind of a lot looser about the format of my script. Because I knew that once I started drawing, I knew what I needed to read and what I didn't need to read. So that worked for me, dude. So I would definitely recommend doing a script, spend some time on that, and that helps you with developing characters, which is your next question.
And as far as your characters, do you develop them all before you even begin the book, or do you develop them as you go, or some of them?
Character development for me is very, 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 very important. I spend a lot of time developing, thinking, and writing about my characters. So let's take for example Nick's in issue 1. There's not a whole lot going on for him in issue 1. He just kind of comes across as someone who is disobedient, and that's definitely part of his character. But in issue 1, we see his dad die, and we see the relationship that he had with his dad, and that's kind of all we get. But then, and that was enough for issue 1 for me. That was enough. But there's a lot more to Nyx that I don't go into, but I want to know it personally. But if actually I did go into it for the half issue, Scolder Stories Nyx. There's a half issue on my website that you can read for free, and we see what happens to him at different key moments of his life. And one of those is that ELIC, the Earth and Law Interplanetary Command, we learn that they abduct children. Actually, we learned that in issue 1, but we see that happen to Nyx in the half issue in Scolder Stories Nyx. We see his parents voluntarily giving him up to this government agency, ELIC, to become a Scolder, and they're happy about it. And that conflicts with his emotions as a child of being super confused and why he has to leave with a stranger. So hopefully I pulled it off that there was this mixture of emotions that he went through and how traumatic that was for him. And also in that half issue, we see that he has fallen in love with a girl named well, on the side of her head it says FUC, and we figure out in that issue what that means and why. But we see him fall in love or kind of have a crush on a girl, and them attempting to connect with each other. But Elick, this agency that stole him from his parents, won't let him be with this girl, and that adds to his character, I think. And we start to learn why Nyx in issue 1 said no at the very end, because it doesn't make sense by itself. But these pieces come together, hopefully, to help us understand why he hates and why he is so disobedient toward Elick. So character development is huge. If your character doesn't develop throughout the story, I don't know like what's going to be super intriguing about it. Actually, Seinfeld, there was almost zero character development in Seinfeld. Yeah, pretty much none. They were the same character throughout the whole series for 9 seasons. The same 4 characters really. Um, but everything else that was going on, I guess, was so funny that we kept going. But usually, characters need to develop in a story or in a movie or a book or whatever. Usually, that happens. I think Seinfeld might be the exception to that. But yeah, so your character development is extremely important. I would recommend doing it ahead of time during the script stage. Like I said in the last answer, that is a good time to do some character development. I brainstorm about my characters while I drive my car or before I fall asleep. I'm thinking about my characters and my story a lot. So yeah, that's your answer, man. It's super important. Do it as much as you can. Um, but it also is a work in progress. So while I'm doing stuff, I'm learning more and more about my characters. So I'm starting issue 3, and I'm realizing stuff about Nyx from issue 1 that I didn't realize back then. And I can include these elements into different stories that I write as I move forward. But like I just include in the issue or in the story, I include what's necessary to tell the story. So in issue 1, we don't learn more about Nyx. But I told a whole separate mini story, so we do get those pieces. The point of issue 1 was not to go full on into Nyx. It was just to introduce us to Nyx and the universe and to get the story rolling. So hopefully that answers your question.
I've been having difficulty naming my characters as well.
Oh yeah, me too, man. I'm terrible at naming characters. Nyx, I think, is a really cool name, but that wasn't even my idea. I had asked my followers on Instagram when I was developing the character what a cool name for him would be. I knew I wanted it to be like 3 letters and to be a cool sounding, but I didn't know what it was. And then one of my followers said Nyx, and right away I knew like, yeah, that's it. But other than that, I've named Lance and Annie, and they both have an kind of sound to it. Um, and then I liked the name Penelope, so I used that name for Nyx's love interest. Masako I named by doing some research into like female samurais, and that was a name of a real life female samurai, so I took that. Um, but I don't think that naming is something that comes natural to me. I have some characters coming up later on in the series that I talked with someone else and he helped me name those characters. But I don't think it's super important, dude. I really don't. Like Superman is the name of one of the most popular heroes ever, and it's a stupid name. Spider-Man is not a creative name. It's kind of dumb, but it works. Batman, like I mean, these are not creative, really impressive names, but it's the characters that stick, and therefore the names stick. Um, I think if Spider-Man was called Fuckface, I don't know if we'd be as into it. It wouldn't make sense based on the context of the character, so you should probably think of that. But otherwise, just name them, I think, and move on. That's kind of what I'm doing. And I keep, yeah, that's my best advice, dude. Just don't worry about it. Name them, move on, and you have plenty of time to change it. Up until you print the damn thing out, you can change the name. So it's like, don't get too stressed out about it. Oh, but one more thing before I move on. Don't like just take a word and spell it backwards. That's just stupid. And that's shit that we do in high school. Don't do that.
As far as drawing your comic out, do you prefer to draw on a bigger canvas size for more details and then shrink it down to size before putting it all into place, or do you just not really worry about fine details when it comes to comic art?
This is one of those answers I think where there is a correct answer. Yeah, you need to work bigger and then shrink it down. Work bigger, scan it at a good quality, and then shrink it down. If you go small and then try to Go bigger, you lose quality, and that's a no-no. I think with comic books, there are panels that are going to be small that you aren't going to put a lot of detail in. Like there's panels of Spider-Man where he doesn't have the webbing just because he's too far away, and drawing that in would get too probably messy. Um, so that makes sense. But otherwise, you want to start big and then go small. But the other, actually, if you want to get really creative, what you could do is draw your panels on like separate sheets of paper and then scan them and then edit those in together. I'm sorry, edit those together into different panels. You can actually, I did this. Yeah, you can see it in issue one of Sculpture Stories for Echo. I did that with the flashbacks. I had drawn all those on 9 by 12 pages and then scanned them. And then I decided I wanted to put those into my comic. So I fit those into panels. Um, so I didn't start at like 11 by 17 and do the whole page. For those flashback pages, I did 9 by 12 scanned and then resized. So there's some flexibility here, but overall, and just like I did with the 9 by 12s, you go bigger, start bigger, and then go smaller.
Transitioning from one place to another in the story.
I think that I did a decent job of this with my issues, and I relied on page breaks to do so. I think turning the page, especially turning the page, is a natural mental break that allows you to reset and to look at whatever you flip over to see the next page. It's like a natural reset. So that's your opportunity to introduce a new location. Historically, artists, storytellers used to do like meanwhile at the Daily Planet or whatever. That's pretty much outdated. I didn't do that at all. At least not those words. But what I might do, I think I'm just thinking back to issue one, and you can see it in my creator commentary. But I believe what I would do is go from a shot. I think it was like a shot on Nyx or something like that, like a close up. And then the next page was like him inside of Madeline, his ship. So I panel one at the top, and I might be wrong about this, but panel one was just a close up of him and his crew in the ship. Panel two, right below it, was Madeline in the sky, and then and then on the left it said Madeline, and then below that was another shot of him in the ship. So I didn't do like on the planet for Echo here we this is blah 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 blah. I just showed a drastically different location than the previous page. And then another jump I did would be the establishing where we are. There's a splash page of For Echo, and on that page you can see a much different location, and I put For Echo, so that should be obvious enough. Marvel did in the what was it? It was I think it was either Civil War or Age of Ultron. I think it was Age of Ultron. They had a huge fonted uh, locations. Like when they switched to a new location, they had the huge word come up, like it would say New York in this huge font. Like it was kind of unexpected. Usually movies put it very small and like in the corner. But it served a purpose because Marvel had so many locations in that movie. They wanted it to be big. They wanted you to know exactly where you were. So it actually had a function. So I would think about what function does it serve? How do you want like would it be would going bigger or smaller help you out? Are there so many locations where you have to like point each one out like blatantly, or can you do something more discreet like I did, where I just put For Echo in like a blue panel, I think a blue box coming off the side. So yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing is that those natural page turns; those are natural ways to establish a new location in the mental reset, and then experiment with everything else and ask the community, ask the J Primecast community in the feedback channel, like, did I do this well? Does it work? Can you tell what's happening? And we will tell you.
Is there any relevance to the size of a panel?
Oh man, this is a huge question. I'm not sure. I'll just do a couple, just whatever comes to my head, a couple points, because really this is like I think a huge question and deserves a lot more time. But yeah, of course, the size does make an impact on the reader. So, and like, man, I mean, seriously, there's so many ways you can go about this. To me, bigger usually means it has more visual impact. Like it's like it's coming at you or whatever. Bigger allows you to do bigger characters in there that are, like charging at us or punching the other guy or whatever the hell it is. But like, I think usually bigger could be used for those means. But you could also do a huge panel with like a very tiny figure right in the middle of it, which can give you a sense of the scope of the scene and how small that character is compared to everything else. So, like, yes and no. Honestly, like I think there's tons of leeway. It depends on what your goal is for that panel and for that page, like what you're trying to show. So, and honestly, like panels have all kinds of uses. For me, panels with issue 2 with Masako, which is available for free on my website. Um, I used panels to keep her contained. So most of my panels in issue 2 were boxes. I wanted more of a boxy kind of look, and I wanted Masako to be small, and I wanted her contained in the panels because she's a small, demure kind of character. Org, on the other hand, broke the panels every now and then. He's huge. He's got a big personality. Masako has a very small personality. She's very small in stature, and just as far as her personality and her backstory, her being boxed in and caged is very relevant to who she is as a character. Except there was, I think, one panel where she is after she's charging, she's jumping into this battle right at the end, where she breaks out of all the panels and she's the biggest that she has, and hopefully it has more of a visual impact because I broke her out of the panel. So yeah, panel size is important, but it's really you make it bigger or smaller depending on what your intent is for the story for the character. So I know that's kind of like a vague answer, but that's one of those creative things where you try it out and you see what happens. You know what I mean? Panel size and layout also helps to set up a pace. You know what I mean? Like you can have a tiny panel in issue 2. Same thing with Masako. There's a scene where it's mostly a splash page on them landing on 2 Echo, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And then the bottom right, there's a panel with Masako, and so it's a panel that's tucked away in the bottom right because it's not as it's. I want it to feel like it's not as important because I want people to feel like she's kind of invisible or small because she will fuck you up once you think that way. So and in that panel, I have her even smaller. So and she's facing away from us. So I want that again. Like I want us to feel like she's a non-threat in a way. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some insight into my thoughts on it. As other creatives answer this question, I'm sure you'll get more. But those are my immediate thoughts on it.
Question: panel shape. Does that determine anything? How a story's read, etc., or is it just personal preference?
Yes, absolutely. Panel shape is important and will help to convey different things. And yes, it is personal preference. It's both. But it's also a reflection of you as an artist. Um, if you have like a dry kind of feel to who you are as a person and what you want to convey on the page, then doing a basic grid might be a good fit for the feel that you want to convey in the story. It's all about what you want to convey and what you want the reader to experience. For me, I like high energy kind of stuff. So, like in issue 1, that's where I really kind of experimented with panels because that was my first time and I wanted to kind of just go and do whatever came to my head. So the panel shapes in issue 1, um, like there's one where Nyx is pointing at where he wants his little squad to go, and so he's breaking out of the panel. His fingers breaking out of the panel, and the panel has a very sketchy feel and is at a drastic angle. So the shape of it, I wanted to convey what Nyx was feeling, which was like this high energy, like go kind of thing. And then the panel, I think immediately after that, which is underneath that panel where he's pointing, it's underneath it because it's I wanted Nick to be dominating that section, so I put him on top of everything else. But the follow up panel, I think, is at a slight angle, which fits the shape of the characters in it that are like charging kind of toward us, but also underneath us. Like there's a slight overhead view of them charging toward us or in our direction. And the panel is bent to them because I wanted them to be the dominant part of the panel. So the panel is formed to them. So yeah, panel shape is huge. In issue 2, I have mostly square because I wanted Masako to be within the panels and to be I wanted to have like a slightly drier feel compared to Org's sense of humor and like his dominant personality. But there are a couple of panels I did in circles because we are looking down like it's basically a splash page of Masako killing these a squad of soldiers, and we are looking down through Org's sniper, and so there's 4 circles that act as panels where we are zooming in on these soldiers that are being killed. So it's a splash page with 4 circles within it to give us the perspective of Org. Um, so I got a little bit creative there, and the shape hopefully accentuates the experience of the reader because now we're looking down a barrel. Now we have like a first person kind of view. Um, yeah, so yeah, panel shape is very important. Be creative, explore, try things out, and this is where layouts I think can be really, really, really beneficial. For this one, for the actually for the last 3 questions, transitions, panel sizing, and panel shape, layouts can be really beneficial. Man, this is like layouts are a great time to experiment and see what does and doesn't work.
How fast do you want to tell your story? How do you decide I'm going to break this up into a trilogy or a set that's larger, or I'm just going to tell it in one book and be done?
This is dependent upon the size and the amount of pages that you want per book. When I did mine, or am doing mine, I wanted a typical American size comic book in both dimensions and page count. So that's I think it was like 22, 20 pages of art, and then front back cover, front inside and back inside cover. So that's like 4 extra pages that are for the cover inside and outside, and then 20 pages of actual storytelling. So that was my parameters. That was my restrictions that I chose to do. You could easily do more. You could easily choose to do a comic book in a non typical size, like a non-US comic book size. That's totally up to you and how you want to tell your story and like how you think it'll best serve your story. So if you think that a standard comic book size will tell your story effectively, then cool. For Astro Pig, I'm not gonna do a comic book size one because it's not a comic book, but also because I want to have more of a landscape, larger feel. So I'm probably gonna do like a wider format book that'll give me a lot of room to go into the worlds that Astro Pig visits and the creatures that he sees because that's a huge part of the book. So I need more space. So I choose my size based on the story that I want to tell. And the text at this point is not going to be as big as the is not going to be as important as the visuals in the book. The visuals are really important, and I want to accentuate those by doing larger format pages, widescreen, landscape size. So that's one thing you need to consider is if you're going to go with the standard size comic and page count, that's your issue. So what I did was I started writing with that in mind that I need to fit it within this page count. And I also kind of per page I had a feel for how I could picture in my head as I was writing it how many panels it was and if it worked or not. And so I have to fit my story into 20 pages. Um, that's the challenge. So I knew, and the way I wrote mine was a little bit different because I started off with a 10-page poem, the Jabberwocky poem, and then developed it into a whole issue, and then developed that into a 6-issue arc just by writing it. So the 10 pages for me at first was fine because that's all I wanted to tell. I just wanted to practice and build a portfolio. So that gave me the opportunity to show off my strengths. That was the goal. Only when I decided I wanted more was when I added a story, some stuff at the beginning, and then some stuff at the end. But yeah, and then for issue 2, I had more of a traditional kind of beginning, middle, end feel to it. And the goal was just to write it within 20 pages or 24 pages, but 20 pages of actual storytelling. And that means you have to make decisions while you're writing. Like what I would recommend is just fucking write it, like just blow it all out. And if you end up with 32 pages, either make the book that long or ask yourself some tough questions like, okay, what do I cut out? What do I don't cut out? Um, And as far as if it should be a trilogy or not, or a 6 issue thing, to me, it's just how long will it take to tell your story in 20 pages at a time? So for me, telling 20 pages at a time is a 6 issue arc. That's what it came out to. And I think a couple issues might be a little bit longer. But that's how long it took to tell a story. I mean, that was really it. If it's an ongoing thing, you don't need to worry about if it's going to be a mini series. You just keep telling it, and pump it out hopefully per month if you can. I don't know who can do that though at our level. But yeah, that's kind of the answer. Is basically figure out your parameters and then make the story fit those parameters, which means making some tough edits, getting rid of some stuff that you might really like but doesn't actually serve to tell a story, and might drag it on too long. I mean, that's what movie directors do. Movie editors do is they take the director just fucking films everything and then gives it to the editor, and the editor is the one who has to choose what goes in and what doesn't to fit into a certain amount of time. So that's what you're doing, man. You are the storyteller, but you're also the director, and you're the editor of your story. So that's it. Jason, I hope this was beneficial for you. I have some really interesting people lined up that have volunteered to answer your questions, and I think you'll get some really tremendous answers. For everyone else that's listening, if you have a question, I would love to hear it. Literally, I want to hear it. So, like, record it and send it to me, and then I'll play it in a podcast and answer it, or maybe even get some of my artist buddies, the Primecast pals, to answer it. I actually have this community now of people, the J Primecast community, that I could ask. Maybe they'll even be willing to do a little chat with me or record their own audio and answer your questions. So please don't be shy. Send your questions. I want to know.